Orleans Parish Coroner Dr. Frank Minyard says that his office is to blame for a mix-up that led to a man's body being accidentally cremated.
In New Orleans, one of the cities with the highest murder rate in the United States, the local agency tasked with investigating exactly how people died had a horrible operation at best. Autopsies were conducted in the former embalming room in the building that was once a funeral parlor. Half of the building was destroyed by fire. The dead were stored in 3 refrigerated trucks in the back parking lot. Pathologists would often work out of FEMA trailers, and the smell of decomposing bodies engulfed the surrounding neighborhood.
The lobby was basically one shared workspace. So when family members came in to get property from their decedent or to do an identification, they're kind of doing that in the same space as a family member who's coming to get their family member possibly committed to the hospital because they're dangerous.
Ironically, located right next door to the office was the famous print company, the T-Shirt Queen. Known for printing images of deceased loved ones on shirts and life-sized cardboard cutouts. While some found the location of the business disturbing, others found it convenient. Dr. Frank Earl Minyard, known as Dr. Jazz, was a trumpet-playing former obstetrician who was elected coroner of New Orleans 10 times, serving a total of 40 years, making him the longest-serving coroner in America. His name was popularized in rap songs throughout the city from numerous hip-hop artists. His term wasn't without controversy. In the 1990s, Minyard was sued for allegedly removing bones and corneas from the deceased and passing them on to transplant centers without permission. He was also accused of covering up the cause of death of the deceased to cover for the New Orleans Police Department. Henry Glover, a resident of New Orleans, survived Hurricane Katrina alongside his mother, brother, and sister. On September 2, 2005, Glover left his family to go to a strip mall to retrieve some suitcases full of loot. NOPD police officer David Warren fatally shot Glover from a second-story balcony from where Warren had been guarding a detective bureau office. Prosecutors alleged that Warren had fatally shot Glover in the chest with a .223 rifle near a Algiers strip mall. Glover's brother, Edward King, and sister, Patrice Glover, came to Henry's aid. A neighbor of Henry, William Tanner, drove Glover and his brother to seek medical attention at a nearby elementary school. This is where matters got even worse. Tanner realized that the school was occupied by a SWAT team. Several SWAT officers testified in trial that Tanner actually fled from a marked police car that was close to the school. Afterwards, several of the SWAT officers joined in the chase, then Tanner eventually stopped on a street located beside the school. Neither of the two men knew that Glover had been injured by a police officer. SWAT officers at the school immediately placed Tanner and King into handcuffs, and then allegedly beat them. Even though proof that Henry Glover was deceased when they encountered the officers was given to the defense in the form of photographs, William Tanner said in numerous interviews that the SWAT officers let Henry Glover bleed to death in the car. NOPD officer Greg McCrae set fire to Glover's body as it sat inside Tanner's 2001 Chevrolet Malibu. The car was left parked on a Mississippi River levee down the street from a NOPD office. Istvan Balog, a former law enforcement officer who came in town from out of state, discovered Glover's corpse on September 9. He admitted in trial that he videotaped the burned car with Glover's remains and had since sold copies of the videotape. Officer David Warren and Officer Greg McCrae were both found guilty, but Officer Warren was acquitted of the charges and set free 2 years later. The main reason for the acquittal was that coroner Frank Minyard did not classify the cause of death as murder. He said that there wasn't enough physical evidence to do so, being that Glover's body was badly burned. He said that even though metal fragments were inside the bones, they could have been bullets or metal from the car. Glover's skull can be seen on the videotape in the trunk of the car, but Minyard said that his office did not receive it. Most believe that the skull was discarded because it was proof that Henry was shot in the head. The family of Ralph Bias, a young man killed in a 2011 drive-by shooting, learned that his body was sent to the wrong funeral home and cremated as they planned his burial.
It happened probably for many reasons. There was failure of the system here at the coroner's office. There was failure of the system with the funeral parlor. There was failure of the system where the cremation occurred.
The Heritage Funeral Director, Arthur Hickerson, had his lawyer speak on his behalf, but his lawyer, Regina Wedig, who sat by Hickerson's side, refused to offer an apology or elaborate on what happened at the funeral home after repeated questions were directed to her.
We don't think it's appropriate for us to comment on what happened. The attorney for Ralph Baez's family says when he spoke to the funeral director Tuesday, it was a much different story.
He actually told us what happened.
Which was?
That the bag was not opened at their facility. So for today, for them not to speak about that, I don't think is fair.
Minyard said the lack of space also played a role in the wrong body being pulled. He also stated that the backyard of the coroner's office had become the storage area for bodies transported there. He said they used 3 refrigeration trailers, the same ones he was given while working in St. Gabriel after Hurricane Katrina. He also stated the space was so little that bodies had to be stacked on top of each other.
I'm surprised this hasn't happened before.
Dr. Minyard retired in the year of 2014 after serving an unprecedented 40 years in office. He later passed away on September 15, 2020. He was 91 years old. Dr. Jeffrey Rouse took the role of Orleans Parish Coroner after Minyard. During his term, the coroner's office would receive long-awaited funds to build a new facility. In April of 2015, Dr. Rouse re-examined the autopsy of Henry Glover. In his final decision, he changed Glover's undetermined death to a homicide. Though Rouse would not clarify what particular evidence led to the decision, he did verbally confirm that Glover's death was homicide by gunshot. Former officer David Warren still has not been charged with the death of Henry Glover. His family is still fighting for justice. In 2016, the former officer Gregory McRae, who burned Henry's body, had his 2010 sentence reduced from 17 years to 11 years. The judge ruled that Gregory was not in his right mind due to lack of sleep and the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina.